Welcome to the Spiritual Geek Podcast, Wisdom for Modern Times, where we focus on living with intention to consciously create a life you love and celebrate. I'm your host, Sheila Franzen, and I'm so excited to share another episode with you. Today, Heather has joined me for a discussion about soulful intuition. Heather is an intuitive soul specialist who, in conjunction with her higher self, uses energy work, spiritual guidance, and other holistic methods to help clients heal themselves from within. With her expertise in Reiki, crystal healing, and intuitive insights, she helps clients release old energy, clear blockages, and achieve mind-body-spirit balance. Through personalized guidance and practical tools, she empowers clients to tap into their own inner wisdom and reach their full potential on their healing journey. Heather, welcome, and thanks for joining me.
Oh, Sheila, thank you so much for allowing me to come on here. I'm honored.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. So is there anything else that you would like to share as part of your introduction?
No, you nailed it very well.
Well, that's because you wrote that very well.
Thank you.
So, you introduce yourself as an intuitive soul specialist, and I've always loved that language that you have named, because it brings so many different concepts into three specific, unique words there combined together are pretty powerful. So, how did you come about like defining that? How did you end up in this world, in calling yourself an intuitive soul specialist? What was the inspiration for that?
The inspiration was actually a conversation I had with a friend who was also very intuitive and also with his partner. And we were just having a dinner one night and we just all came up with it all at once because it made sense with everything that I have learned and utilized over my life even. I never knew I was intuitive until I was older. I was in my 30s before somebody's like, "Wow, you're really intuitive." And I'm like, "I am?" Yeah. And so it was a natural thing that I didn't even know I had, this gift. And when we were talking about it, they said to me, "Well, you're so intuitive that you pull intuition out of other people's souls." And I'm
Mm.
like, "Oh, so I actually connect with their soul to pull that intuition out." And that just makes so much sense to me, especially after I became a Reiki master, because the intuition just went off the charts at that point. So I have to be careful what I say around people at certain times.
And why is that? Why do you say that?
I find that a lot of people don't want me telling them something they already know because it might be uh, I don't painful for them, or it could be something that they just don't want to acknowledge.
Those moments of only engaging in that when somebody is actually ready to hear it, which is why we have sessions and healing sessions, because then people are coming and saying, yes, I want that intuition and that guidance. So that makes sense.
Yes,
um,
I tend to say, "Do you really want my opinion?" Because that resonates with a lot of people who don't understand energy work.
yeah. So, that concept of, being called intuitive, like, how do you name intuition? How do you describe intuition?
Well, for me, I had done a lot of research on it once I found out, right? And, I just find that the definition of it can be very unique to the person. For instance, mine is just a very strong inner knowing. I also sometimes get feelings, or I can feel somebody else's intuition and how they do it, right? Oh, you have a gut intuition, right? And they're like, oh yeah. So I feel it's very different for everybody, but I think that intuition is what is defined by yourself without your ego being involved.
Mm. And
It's
and where do you think intuition, like, where's that come from, right? When we talk about ourselves, because there's so many aspects to self from, our heart and our mind and our ego and our soul. Like, how do you how do you talk about where intuition comes from?
I find that for me, it's more of a heart-mind connection.
Hmm.
Therefore, you're receiving both a message through your crown chakra as well as one through your heart chakra. And when they're in sync, that's your intuition telling you you've got it right. That what you've picked up on, the energy that you've picked up on is correct for yourself, for you or for myself, if that
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
yeah,
Mhm.
no, that does. I always just I love talking about intuition and how people receive guidance because, like you said, when somebody told you you're intuitive
Mhm.
and you're like, what?
Yeah.
um, and then we start to look back and we realize, oh, yeah, well, we are all intuitive, right? I mean, everybody has an aspect of a gift of intuition. It's about how well you've tuned that synchronicity that you describe as heart and crown chakra, and many would describe it as, maybe heart and mind, that knowing that comes from someplace other than our mind that feels more like truth, that has a different frequency and a different resonance, and that um, there are many ways to tune into that intuition and to discover those moments of intuition for ourselves because I think I'm bouncing back and forth in my thoughts at the moment, and so I'm trying to focus in myself and my own intuition and be like,
Yes.
where are we going with this conversation? But I think what I am getting is a bit of a conversation around, how do we strengthen our own inner intuition, right? Because there's an aspect of, what makes it such a gift that you're able to connect with other souls, and the soul intuition is your ability to find clarity, right? Your ability to be completely present and to have the gift of knowing how to connect, and that's part of what makes you you and you unique. But I think about intuition for myself, and as I watch it with other people, our intuition in some ways is only as strong as, maybe that's not true. It's only as strong as our ability to tune out everything else. Right? Like, I
Right.
don't find I get a lot of intuition, like, while I'm watching TV, right? Because what? I'm focused on TV. I'm not really intuiting anything. But you have to, like, clear the channel, right? You have to remove all the static if we think about the old TVs, and you had to get a clear channel. And sometimes you didn't have the clear channel, and you had to move the antenna around to get that clear channel. And I think intuition's a little like that. It's like, how do we get to having a clearer channel when we talk about intuition, just for ourselves? Are there things you've learned along your journey that help you get clearer intuition?
Yes, I've looked into symbolism, numerology. There's also facets of asking a question to the universe and then telling the universe, I want to see 3 pictures of black Labrador receivers, right, in the next week to know if I'm correct. Right. And that helps to reinforce it. It's whatever is meaningful to you, something that you wouldn't normally see, too. Right. In the middle of wintertime, be like, I'd love to see butterflies. Or if you're in the middle of the summertime, I'd love to see snow capped mountains, something that means something to you so that when you see it, you remember that, oh, yes, I did ask that question. I once asked a question and asked for 3 white roses, and they came to me in the most bizarre ways. Right, I saw one on social media, I saw one in the wild, right outside, and then somebody presented me with a napkin that was folded into a rose, all within a week. I'm like, okay. I guess
That's
that's dead on,
it,
right?
and not any of them how you might have expected to, like, walk down the sidewalk and see a bunch of white roses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's I found that a very effective way back in the day to strengthen my intuition, because it helped reinforce, right? What I had thought, or the message I had received, and not thinking was pure, ego, right? Our ego wants us to be, you know, always right. And sometimes we're not. you know? The truth is not always what we would think that it is at times.
Well, and
So,
I love that
meditate.
aspect of asking for confirmation because that is the tricky part of intuition because it doesn't always feel real. It feels a little strange and it can feel, I mean, it is imagination sometimes and it feels, it's not, you can't read it on a piece of paper and maybe you hear it with like actual sound in your ears. That's not one of my gifts or way that I hear it. But I know there are people that do, and that's so cool.
Right?
Um, and so asking, like, going, oh yeah, confirm this for me in a certain way, and knowing that you're, you mentioned soul, right? An aspect of your soul, and your. I've also heard people do that kind of confirmation with their guardian angel, right? Their guides, if
Right.
asking, is this what you were trying to tell me? If so, show me a sign. Or show me. I love that you say three, like you use three, right? Instead of just show me a rose, because then our mind starts to question, okay, well, yeah, that was one rose. I could have seen one rose anywhere. But when you say three, that's like, um, that's crazy, right? Like if it shows up three times in those unique ways, there
Mhm.
definitely a powerful confirmation.
Right. It's more of a synchronicity than it is a coincidence.
Yes, synchronicity versus coincidence.
Mhm.
That, um, because synchronicity is that alignment. And so when we're talking about intuition, we're talking about alignment, right? We're
Yeah.
alignment with the guidance and the information that we're receiving both internally, or from, whether we've asked a question of spirit or the divine or soul or a guardian angel or a guide. It is synchronicity and not just coincidence. So I like that a lot of thinking about, no, I mean, of course, there are coincidences in the universe, although some would say there are no coincidences in the universe.
True, true.
It is all synchronicity, or it is all purposeful. It is all in alignment. Um, so how do you use intuition in your day-to-day life? How does this show up for you just in your day-to-day life?
It's funny because in my day-to-day life, I don't normally, take the time to connect like I would with a client, into the intuition. Um, but it just little things will pop into my mind. And that's always kind of been what I thought were, quote unquote thoughts.
Mm,
And I have found that more and more of them are actual messages, right? Like, for instance, the other day I was like, "Oh, there's something wrong with my sister. She's not feeling right." Well, I got a text from her today that she had had a mammogram and they're going to do some further testing just to make sure everything's okay. So those are just like the connections and the energetic frequencies and vibrations that I believe that we have, between people we really care about too. And that's a form of intuition. So, um, there's even things where it's almost like a warning. Like, let's say I'm on my way to the restaurant and I'll be thinking something and I'm like, well, that sounds bizarre. Why would I be thinking that? Well, I get to the restaurant and it's exactly what's happening. It's, the place is in chaos, for instance. I mean, most restaurants can tend to be chaotic, especially in the kitchen, but it's always like something that was like more specific. It's specific about a person, or a customer that I've known for a while. It's very interesting to me that I get these little things that pop into my mind. I'm thinking, well, that's kind of weird. But then I get the confirmation when I get to my destination, or I get the confirmation, let's say, from the client, right? I might pick up on something while I'm doing a session and say to that. And I said, does that make sense to you? And they will say, yes.
mm, mhm.
So
So
that
that's
is,
where you've
I mean, it's
learned
kind
to,
of a weird explanation, but it's just kind of how it happens for me, I guess.
yeah. Well, and I think that's just it, is we each learn our own way, right? In our
Mhm.
day-to-day lives. And you start, the more you tune in, and become more present, right? It's
Right.
interesting that you mentioned like driving in the car, right? It's like, well, in some ways, we often are more present driving in the car as long as you're not one of those people on
Yeah.
your cell phone.
Right.
Um, but it is an opportunity. Like I get lots of insights driving in the car, and I often drive around even in silence just so that I have space. So it's funny because you we tune in by getting quiet, right? It's not that you're probably going to get a lot of intuition in a noisy, crazy place, unless you're like highly skilled in your ability to tune in no matter what's going on around you. But I think it does require a little bit of slowing down and a little bit of just taking a moment and creating space and then seeing what shows up, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be meditation, just, okay. Yeah, that
Right.
makes sense, or, "Oh, I just got that."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like, I guess, the summer that the world was shut down, as I like to call it, um, I would tend to go for a lot of walks. And a lot of my messages then would come through, animals or insects that I would come across. And
Mm.
right. And then I would look up their symbolism. So that can help strengthen your intuition as well.
Just
By
noticing the messages that are around you, like,
yes,
how things show up.
yes. And a lot of
Yeah.
it just it's suggestions by nature, right? Or it's messages from nature, your totem animals, whatever, you choose to call it. But I found that very powerful too, to help with the strengthening of the intuition and just feeling what's around you and noticing, right? We're observing, we're not like looking for clues, we're not looking for symbols. We're just like, oh, well, that's a bright blue bird that I've never seen before, right?
Yeah, I love all of and then it's really about interpreting what's it mean for you? Because
Yeah.
a lot of times we can get tied up in, there might be books of what symbols mean. And it's like, well, that's what the symbol meant to that person.
Yeah.
But really, what is it that the message is for you?
Mm,
And not thinking that you have to rely on somebody else's interpretation of the bluebird or the hummingbird or the animal, but just be willing to ask yourself, what message did they have for me? What did I think of when I saw them? What did it make me remember?
yes.
And being open to that um, beauty of connection, right? That beauty of the world that is all around us and always has messages for us, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, nature is incredible that way. It's just a beautiful place to slow down and get inspiration and ideas. I mean, every time I go out and spend time with a tree or
Mm,
trees, I'm like, oh, yes, they have so many. Nature is such a beautiful reflection of the simplicity the simplicity and the complexity um, and depth of our experience here
absolutely.
on Earth. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we are part of nature as it exists here on this planet.
Yes.
So that's even a bigger connection to that intuitiveness. It's a vibration, it's a frequency, it's the energy, right? As Tesla calls it.
Yes, well,
So
everything is energy. Yes,
right.
we could have a lot of fun talking about Teslas, Taurus, and all kinds of energetic concepts.
Exactly.
Um, I was reminded as you were talking, I don't know, this summer, would you say the summer the
They shut
world
the world
stopped?
down. Yeah, they
The
shut the
summer
world
they
down.
shut the world down. Have you seen that documentary on Apple TV called The Year Earth Changed?
No, I didn't.
So it was a incredible documentary that captures a bunch of research that the scientific community did during the time the world was shut down and how drastically aspects of nature recovered in their wholeness around people in India hadn't seen the Himalayas and they showed up one morning because the smog layer had lifted and you know different types of ocean species, in canals and cities that had not been there for, years and years and years. And so um, it just made me think of that and chuckle because it, it was a crazy time and lots of turmoil in different ways for different people and all of the trauma and the tragedy that occurred, and yet there was a beauty in that slowing down that we had to experience. So I
Yeah.
love that you took advantage of it and connected with nature and what signs were around you.
Yes, it was a very interesting time, and I was by myself a lot, which really gave me some precious moments of more learning, more strengthening of my skills and, healing gifts. And I'm so grateful for that time because it gave me that perspective of
Yeah.
something outside of, you know, the daily grind, coming
Yeah.
back to family, friends, nature, home, and how that's more important than many things that we tend to put our attention towards.
Yeah, that we get. Well, it's
Mhm.
a busy world on the planet today. There's a whole lot of us here. I often, comment for people that there's almost 8 billion of us on the planet now, and,
Mhm.
120 years ago, there was barely a billion, and so there
Yeah.
there's a lot of souls on this planet right now going through their journey and their journey through consciousness, healing. There's a way that there's such a large number of people here on the planet, probably not by accident at this point. So it's such an incredible increase when you look at 125 years. It's pretty amazing the amount of souls here, which kind of brings us back to this concept of an intuitive soul specialist,
Mhm.
that the work that you do with other people and connecting in with soul. There's an aspect of this that's the part of healing and readings and guidance and ways that we can engage with other people to sometimes help us see things that we can't always see ourselves, or that maybe we've looked at an issue in depth for a long time and we still are like we can't seem to shift it. Like how do you find that, this, because we talk about intuition and it's often about developing it for ourselves, but how are you able to really use this aspect of soul intuition to connect with others? Like how can that really help people in their journey?
I find in my sessions that when people are willing to be open-minded and open-hearted, they will be able to offer what's going on in their life. And as we discuss it, and I'll point certain things out to them that they have said and how they have said it, they'll tend to start connecting into their own soul and rewording things.
Mm,
Right. So again, it's a type of energy. What we say out loud can manifest. And it helps them on their journey to be more conscious, more aware of what they are sending out, which also allows them to be more conscious of what's coming in.
yeah, so that's
More
the part.
observation. Yeah, sorry.
More observation. Yeah, more observation, more
Mhm.
intuition.
Right. And it helps them to have that conversation because a lot of the times we have these phrases that we say a lot and we don't even realize how often we say them. And then we're complaining about something that is related to that same phrase. Right.
Yes, it's that bearing witness. There's an incredible gift in just
Mhm.
the conversation and connection in when you're fully present to be able to support people in these unique ways. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so we talk about intuition and soulful intuition.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just prompted to kind of come back to that and investigate that a little bit. Um, when we think of soulful intuition and connecting to our own soul, um, how do you describe soul? Like, what's that mean?
To me, our soul is here to experience this life, right? We call, a human life. And during our human life, we have an ego, and the
Mhm.
ego tends to override the soul quite often. And it's supposed to be the reverse, right? We're supposed to be led by our soul instead of being led by our ego. The way the
Mhm.
human life has been, we've been trained to be more egoic than soulful. And retraining ourselves in I try to work with my clients to do this, to be more soulful led by putting the ego aside and helping them to understand how that works in their own, individual situations and relationships. So to me, ego is the personality that sometimes gets in the way of our soulful connection to our intuition, or
Mm.
to our higher self, or to our soul, to God,
That's a Right, to our creator, or the
Mhm,
divine or spirit or whatever language that is in alignment for somebody with their background and their teachings and their awareness. It doesn't
mhm,
really matter what philosophy or what names you use, but it's this concept of, how do we more fully align our human experience,
mhm,
um, in concert with soul. Like, that's a beautiful way to describe, really moving to a more joyful life, right? When we're living more in concert with, concert in synchronicity. Concert's probably a confusing word. In synchronicity with, um, our soul, energy and our soul purpose, then the human experience is more fun. It's lighter. It's We're in our heart, and we see things differently. We're not trapped in that aspect of maybe our personality habits or
yes,
patterns that we've created or things that keep us stuck. And then we can just have fun connecting in nature or connecting with others. And I think
yes,
that really then is the power of healing, right?
right,
That's why we're on these journeys to rise in consciousness, is to truly return to walking and living synchronistically with our soul and not, trapped, the word some people might use,
mhm,
trapped in our egos, right? Trapped in our thoughts.
yes, exactly. And I once, was it last week? I think I heard someone say, during your day, be fascinated versus frustrated, right? Be fascinated with
Yes.
somebody's behavior that you might not like, but don't get frustrated by it. So the frustration is our ego. The fascination is our soul. Oh, why are you like this? Or something must be wrong, or how can I help you? Right? It's a different feel, it's a different energy.
Yes, that I love fascination versus frustration. That's beautiful. I was writing last night and I was writing about staying curious about life, because if we can stay in that same energy, right? Curiosity and fascination, it is um uh it keeps us fresh. It keeps us in that energy of a child, right? Because how's a child go through the world? They go
Hmm.
through the world trying to figure it all out. They're back in a human body. How's this work? What's this? I want to touch that. I get into every cabinet. I explore everything.
Yes.
I want to see what my voice does. I want to see what my hands can do. I want to see where I can run. And they're in fascination all the time. And they're
Yes.
in curiosity all the time. And if we can retain that and be able to let go of, um, all the ways our ego ties us up, then, like, I mean, most children are pretty happy, right?
Yes.
It's only when we, um, they go through experiences and they might misinterpret things and misinterpret getting in trouble or being told no or how some other adult or child or person interacts with them. And so then we start that journey as a child of creating our belief systems,
Mm,
and then we have to unwind those as adults so
yeah,
that we can get back to living in that innocence and curiosity and fascination. Like, I love that description of fascination versus frustration.
yeah, I did too, and I'm like, "That's my new mantra," you know?
Yeah, I'm gonna use that too.
Yeah,
I can think of a couple of places I need to apply that.
yes,
Uh,
well, let me tell you, it makes working at the restaurant a little easier.
yeah, well, or going to the grocery store
Mhm.
or driving
Driving
in
down the
traffic.
road. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes even just interacting with friends and family, because
Yeah.
we have if it's a trigger, it's from the ego, right?
Yes.
So,
Or a
when we
pattern or a past life or a
right,
traumatic memory or something. But yes, somewhere in there.
yeah,
Um, but yes, how do we stay in the energy of fascination?
mhm,
That's such a beautiful, lighthearted, well, it's so much more fun, right? Just,
exactly. It
how does
is.
that how can I find fascination? How do I take a word with that kind of energy and play with it, right? How could I spend a whole day being fascinated by everything instead of being frustrated by everything? Like, cuz it's a choice. Like,
Yes.
this is the part of the journey as human and free will is it really is always a choice. And
Mhm.
I remember a teacher a long time ago, it's like we make choice over complicated, and really it's like, do you want chocolate or vanilla? It's like,
Yeah.
well, I want vanilla. And
Mhm.
it's, do you want to try fascination today or frustration? And, when we're used to frustration, yeah, that can be hard to change. Our neural pathways are locked in and we've got some habits we might have to break.
Yeah.
But yet, you can put reminders around, you can pop it up on your phone. What are you fascinated with right now?
Yeah.
um, you can find ways to bring in that aspect of fascination.
Absolutely. I totally agree, and I think when we practice the fascination more often, it does allow our soul to lead us, so we do become more intuitively soulful and soulfully intuitive.
Well, that's what I was just thinking. So, we've been guided in this conversation by our intuition, because
Mhm.
I don't think either one of us thought about fascination, but there's
No.
an aspect of fascination is a way to access intuition. I love that you were just saying that,
Mhm.
because if we can be that curious and fascinated by everything that we're feeling inside and even what we're thinking, right? Because
Yeah.
then we can pay attention to it and what we want to listen to and what we don't. We're fascinated by the signs we might be getting, or the moments of a thought pops into our head and we're like, oh, that's nothing we've ever learned. Well,
Right.
that's intuition, right? When that thought comes from nowhere, that's not the power of your brain. That's a moment of intuition.
Yes.
And I think we've become so concrete in our thinking minds that we think that every thought is actually um it's us, like
Mhm.
that it's the human, that it's the ego, or that it's our power. And it's actually tons of intuition comes in as thoughts. It's taken me a long time personally to differentiate that. I used to be like, well, but how is, like, it just feels like my thoughts. And it's like,
Yeah.
yes, it does, because that's the avenue for me that my intuition shows up. It comes in as a thought. I don't see things that often. I occasionally might feel like I hear something, but it's thoughts, right? And so just being willing to go, I didn't know that before that moment when that thought came into my head.
Yeah.
And so that's intuition, that's
Mhm.
guidance, that's connecting with our soul and our guides, our higher self. you can connect with any of them and ask for information, and it's going to show up like thoughts. And
Yes.
it just takes practice. It takes years of practice and years of finding ways that you can ask for confirmation, coming back to what you started with.
Exactly. And, we as humans, we're actually both receivers and, givers of energy, which can be translated into thoughts. And I was once with somebody and he says to me, "How come you always know what I'm thinking?" I said, "Because you broadcast really loudly." you know? So, so it's like that's how I think a lot of people can have really meaningful conversations with each other or pick those thoughts out of each other's minds because we do receive and give energy all the time.
Yeah, now you're diving into a fun little conversation around
Right.
telepathy.
Yes. That's another day.
Oh, my kids
Exactly.
do that sometimes, and they're like, "How do you know what I'm thinking?" And then they're like, "Stop telling me what I'm thinking or feeling. You don't know." And I'm like, "Well, that's true and not true, actually."
Exactly. Exactly.
But you can actually train yourself to, like, you can be trained to develop telepathy, right? I mean, I used to read all kinds of crazy journals, even some of the governmental stuff around profiling and telepathy many, many years ago, and how there's ways to develop it. And I actually, I follow Mind Valley and have done some of their programs. And he was talking about Jose Silva and the Silva Ultramind system, where he focused on training his children, and they actually continued to develop their skills of telepathy, right? And it's like, yeah, it- that level of connection is possible for anyone.
Correct.
It's just whether you're willing,
To do the work.
it's a if you're willing to do the work. And so it's a beautiful gift, though, to come back to, like, that, to have people for you to say, "You're really intuitive," and to realize you had a gift that you didn't know was there, that you've then had the opportunity through your training and teachings and healings and your journey to expand and be able to help others. And as we probably come to a close with our discussion on fascination here,
Yes.
is there anything you'd like to share around how you work with people, how people can work with you around your products and services?
Everybody can get a hold of me from my website, which is namasteraise.com. And I have different, types of sessions for people. Although I find that the people who are willing to let me just do what I do without picking something, they get energy work, they get past life clearing, they get, intuitive guidance, they get, you know, I don't, life coaching essentially as well for a lot of things. So it's all kind of packaged as one, even if choose you want like something different. But that's how my sessions have been coming together even more and more. So you don't get just intuitive guidance, you don't just get a healing, you get like 4 or 5 things in one.
That I love that, because that's just bringing all of your gifts into how you can most help people, and it doesn't have to be specific to a modality you learned or a specific way you were trained to help others, but you're integrating those, and I think that's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been cool. It's been kind of a cool journey, and it's been fun. I really love working with clients.
Yes, it is a beautiful thing to be stepping forward in the way that you are at this point and just focused on helping others, right?
Mhm.
That's when we've gotten out of our own way to move into being of service to other souls on the planet.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Heather, for joining me today. It's been fun to talk about soulful intuition and fascination.
Yes.
It's definitely, like, I'm so grateful for that. I'm really grateful for the fascination part today. So thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome. You've just listened to the Spiritual Geek Podcast. Thank you for joining us. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to share a comment and a rating on your favorite podcast platform. It helps us get more visible and other people learn and know and hear about the beautiful topics that we're discussing. If you were inspired, consider sharing it. Love and light to each of you. May your day be filled with joy and wisdom as you consciously create your life.